Welcome back to the channel. My name is Lisa Elvin Stoltari, and I'm a genealogist and a passionate traveler. Over the last few years, I've been doing a series called Les Filles du Roi. This past year, I started Les Filles Mariées, and we're really getting to know the Filles Mariées, the marriageable girls. We're on episode number 33. So we're slowly, there's about 260 of them or so, and we're slowly getting through them all. But before we begin, let me let you know ways you can support the channel. The first three keep you in the know. Subscribe, like, and notify. All that helps all my logarithms and gets my name out, you know. The next three are ways to help the channel grow, which is Coffee, which is like a payment, an online payment one time. And then we have Patreon, which is like a monthly subscription. And then we have a Thanks, which is another one-time payment. And also don't forget my PayPal connection on my website, Have Roots Will Travel. So all of those are ways that you can help the channel grow. And thank you to those of you who have partaken of that. And without further ado, let's get started and get to know our Filles Mariées for this episode. So les filles mariées are the marriageable girls, and they came before les filles du roi. As you can see by the dates, 1634 to 1662 is really the period that they came in. A few of them came in before, or I shouldn't say before, after 1662, like into 1663. But after 1663, especially the fall of 1663, that was the Filles du Roi. So we want to contain ourselves to this period. The reason why 1634 is so important is because that is the time that Quebec really regained its ownership, if you will, from England. And France, was in charge, and they were able to take it back because the English had taken it in 1629, and then there was, occupation, if you will. And then finally by 1634, there was a lot of the people that had been there before started to come back. This was the period in which Trois-Rivières was founded, for example, in 1634. So this was a monumental period, and they needed to populate this country, this new France. So let's see who is our Filles Mariées for this episode. Our Filles Mariées for this episode 33 is Anne DeLaunay, and she is a viewer request. I do not have her in my files, so she was a delight to get to know. She was born in 1635 in La Rochelle, France. Her parents were Louis DeLaunay and Marguerite Gagne. La Rochelle was founded during the 10th century and became an important harbor in the 12th. Until the 15th century, La Rochelle was to be the largest French harbor on the Atlantic coast, dealing mainly in wine, salt, and cheese. The name was first recorded in 961 as Rupella, from a Latin diminutive meaning Little Rock. La Rochelle has one of the richest histories of all the towns of France, from its beginnings as an area where the Knights of Templar had their strongest base, to of Aquitaine, who married Henry Plantagenet in 1152, who would become King of England, and Henry II in 1154, thus putting La Rochelle under Plantagenet rule until Louis VIII captured it in the 1224 siege of La Rochelle. During the Plantagenet control of the city in 1185, Henry II had the Vauclair castle built, remains of which are still visible in the Place de Verdun. From 1568, La Rochelle became a center for the Huguenots. You can see in the maps we have Nouvelle-Aquitaine, which is the region that she's from, and the département is Charente-Maritime, and of course she's in La Rochelle, which is in that little purple section there. Her temple that was designed, it was actually a Protestant temple, and it was destroyed, obviously, in the Huguenot revolts. The middle picture is La Rochelle, the way it looks today, as you can imagine. And, of course, this is the famous, famous harbor of La Rochelle. So Anne would leave France in 1661, having lost her parents in 1659. She would have had to convert to Catholicism either before leaving or in New France. We have no records. She came with her niece, Marie, Suzanne Benet, her sister Jeanne, would come over in 1662 and would marry, but did not leave any descendants. So Anne is in New France by 1661. The groom that she selected and who selected her, his name was Pierre Mailloux de Desmoulins, and he was born in 1631 in Brie-sur-Matha in France. His parents were Jacques Mailloux and Suzanne Arnaud, and you can see that they come from the same region, Nouvelle-Aquitaine, and the same département, Charente-Maritime. But of course, Brie-sur-Matha is a very small commune, and it's got about 800 people, very, very rural area. The Saint Pierre church, which parts of it date from the 12th century, is where Pierre would have been baptized. And this is kind of a look at the little village as it exists today on the upper right. So there's Pierre. How does he come to New France? So Pierre comes to New France around 1656. He was promised 75 pounds a year for a contract of 3 years. At the end of that period, he bought land in Beaubar for 40 pounds in 1659. He actually was a clog maker, sabotier, they call it. So this was an important shoemaker, if you will, very important to the new country. And so this was a profession that was extraordinarily needed. On the 23rd of October, 1661, Pierre and Anne were married. So they would eventually settle at Notre-Dame-des-Anges. You can see it by the circle that it's just a little bit below Charlesbourg and Bourg-Royal. And so it is part of Quebec City, of course, and then it's very close to the St. Lawrence River. So that's an important part as well in terms of, getting places. This is a depiction of Notre-Dame-des-Anges during that period, and this is a historic replication of it to this picture. This is the 1667. So they were living there in 1667. We have Pierre and Anne. They have Joseph and Noël, and they have one arpent à valeur. So they have half an acre of land. So then the family would move to Ile d'Orléans and spend some time there. We have talked about Ile d'Orléans and how important it is to the French-Canadian history. It is about 3 miles from Quebec City on that island. That island, as you know, has to be divided into 6 different areas, and you need to know where your family was, whether it was Saint-Pierre, Saint-Famille, Saint-François, Saint-Jean, Saint-Laurent, Saint-Pétronille. All of them are part of the island, but each of them have their own church and their own tradition, so it's important. And this is just a view of the park that is the memorial park that you go to, that I just went and visited. It really does look that beautiful. So they would move back to Quebec City. Remember, his profession of clog maker and sabotier is one in which, have tools will travel. So it wasn't about farming for him. It was about finding the work. So in 1681, we find him and Anne living in Quebec City. His children, Joseph 19, Noël, Jean, Anne, and Pierre are all with him. Let's review a little bit about Quebec City. It's the capital city of the province of Quebec. 500,000 people live directly in Quebec City, and it was originally named by the Algonquins, who named the area Quebec, which in their native language meant where the river narrows. Samuel de Champlain founded the first settlement, which was called Ville de Quebec. And the city walls, which were common back then, are still there, making Quebec City the only city with remaining city walls north of Mexico City. There's so much to see in Quebec City, but the 2 places I've chosen to show you are La Maison Jacquette, which is on the upper left, which is the oldest house in surviving private residence in Quebec. It dates from 1675. So, I kind of think of Pierre and Anne being able to see that house, And then, of course, on the bottom left, we have the Petit Champlain, which is claimed to be the oldest commercial district in North America. And these are just an older version of a map, which I really like. I just think it has a flavor on the upper right. And then in the middle, it's just a depiction of Quebec in about 1700. Gives you an idea of the port and the church and the hospital and all of that. So very much a seaport kind of town. 7 children. Joseph married Suzanne Richard and had 2 children, both of whom made it. He then married Louise Achot and had 7 children, 4 of whom made it to adulthood. Louise's mother was a fille du roi named Marguerite Bonnefoy, which we've not yet done. Noël married Louise Marcoux and had 8 children, 7 of whom made it. Jean-Baptiste married Marguerite Caron and had 13 children, 7 of whom made it. Anne would marry Jean Dubois and have 3 children, all of whom would make it. Marie would die at 3 years of age. Pierre would marry Anne Lefebvre and have 1 child who did not make it. And then he married Charlotte Moreau and had 8 children, 2 of whom made it. He then married Angélique Trepanier and had 7 children, 5 of whom made it. And their last born child died in infancy. Would both die within a year of each other. He died on June 11, 1699, and he and Anne would have been married 38 years at that point. Anne would die actually 18 months later on December 12, 1700, and she would leave 145 descendants as of 1729. Here are some resources that I always like to refer you back to. One of the ones I really, really like and I want you to delve into is the French-Canadian genealogist. I have pictured it on the third to your left. It's a really amazing site with lots and lots of resources. She really has put a lot of time and effort and knowledge, and I would highly recommend her work. So ends our Fille Mariée, number 33, Anne DeLaunay. She had a remarkably not traumatic life. You know, sometimes it's good because some of these ladies, I mean, seriously. So sometimes it's nice to just say she came on the boat, she got married, she had children, and she left quite a bit of descendants. So, she contributed. She was there at Quebec City and was obviously part of a little bit of Notre Dame des Anges, and then afterwards in Orléans. And so she was obviously a very flexible lady, able to move along, finally moved to Quebec. So I really think that she was just a woman of substance and someone who was able to just, rise to the occasion, as we say, and contributed much to not only New France, but also the areas where she would have been a pioneer. So we want to thank Anne and we want to bless her memory. And for those of you who are descendants, you can be proud of what she and Pierre did. So until I see you on episode 34, I want to say thank you to my patrons and supporters. Couldn't do it without you. Love hearing from you, and your support means the world to me. So with that being said, au revoir.